I'm in Stromness for the Orkney Blues Festival 2019 with Dave Arcari, who's one of the headliners. And welcome to Orkney, Dave.
Thanks, man. Nice to be here.
So, how did you get started playing the blues?
Oof, long story really. I guess when I was 17 or 18 I got my first guitar, and an acoustic guitar. It must have been the very early 80s, so it was kind of pre-Oasis or Ed Sheeran or any of the people that kind of influence kids to get acoustic guitars now. So I got a hold of an acoustic guitar, and I kind of suppose I naturally got into people like Bob Dylan and Neil Young. And I think possibly, although I didn't know it at the time, one of my favourite Dylan albums around then was the first album, and it really is pretty bluesy. There's a lot of kind of Americana folk blues kind of things underpinning everything in there, and so I think that and then probably the stuff I'd listened to as a kid had all kind of permeated my head, and I'd come across stuff and liked it but not really knowing why. And it wasn't really until a few years later, where I was sort of getting to understand the guitar a bit more, I realised that that there was a commonality through a lot of the stuff that I liked. And I don't know if it was necessarily the sort of structure or just the simplicity of it. And so I kind of started my first band when I moved to the east coast of Scotland to go to college, which was a blues band. I was kind of playing electric guitar, and it was so I played some regular, straight, normal tuning guitar. I also played some slide, but I was much better, or certainly much more at home playing the bottleneck slide stuff than I was the regular tuning. I've never been much good at or much interest in doing any of that kind of widdly stuff. I don't really, it sounds strange for an artist who's like kind of plonked in the blues pigeonhole, but I don't really have time for guitar solos and widdly stuff. And for me, like bottleneck open tuning really just kind of sets the scene for that. You just wire into it and hammer it out. There's no airs and graces about it.
Well, a lot of the old blues guys seem to play very instinctively anyway, and just play by feeling and not worry about technique so much.
I guess, and I can't really count beyond 5 or 6, so trying to count numbers of bars and everything was always going to be a problem.
So have you gone back and studied older blues music as well then?
Yeah, I'm very influenced by a lot of the pre-war Delta blues, people like Son House, Bucka White. One of my very, very favourites is Blind Willie Johnson. And I think here at the Blues Festival there's a Robert Johnson thing on last night. It's not that I don't like Robert Johnson, but for me Robert Johnson's been done to death a bit. The world doesn't really need to hear Sweet Home Chicago or these kind of things again and again. And certainly I know that if I attempted to do it, they certainly wouldn't want to hear it. But there came a time when I was first starting to mess about with the guitar. Really the only access to that music was on cassettes, and they'd been generally copied. So somebody had copied it for somebody, and then somebody copied it for somebody else. By the time I got to listen to it, it was just a mush. So although I knew I liked the stuff, I couldn't actually make head nor tail of it, because it was just a kind of mushy kind of noise. And it wasn't really until I started hearing other people playing that I was able to actually at least kind of fathom out roughly what was going on, and I would look back at people like that, and then subsequently people like the North Mississippi Hill Country guys, people like R.L. Burnside Jr., Kimbra. One of my favourites is a guy called Sidell Davis, and just mushed that all together with a lot of the other influences of music that I like, a lot of trash country, punk, rockabilly, put it all in there. And I guess what I do just kind of fell out the other end somewhere.
You also have some pretty strong Scottish influences in there, which is quite unusual for blues music.
Yes, I guess. Well, it was a funny thing. 12, 13 years ago I got asked to take a Robert Burns poem, Parcel of Rogues, and turn it into a song. Now I hadn't realised that. I think the Battlefield band maybe had done something similar. As far as I was concerned, it was just a poem. I'd never really paid much attention to it before. I certainly wasn't aware of any songs based on it. So when the BBC asked if I would do this for a documentary marking 300 years since the Act of Union, I had a bit of fun with that. I reckon Robert Burns might have been a punk if he was around in the 70s.
Possibly. And Macpherson's Lament as well.
And Macpherson's Lament, that came about, almost not a direct response, but after the Parcel of Rogues thing, the BBC documentary was quite a big success, and the year after that came out was the year of Homecoming. and this guy, a professor, I think, Burns expert from Glasgow University, was putting together a special event at Orkney. Now, I played at Orkney in the west end of Glasgow before, and the kind of, I was going to say it's a scuzzy rock, it's not a scuzzy, it's quite a posh rock venue really, in the grand scheme of things. But in the upstairs they have this amazing kind of auditorium with stained glass windows, but it's, you know, people sitting in rows and it's all kind of proper. So I got asked to play at this, and he asked if I would play 2 songs. I said, well, if you maybe haven't heard what I normally do, this could scare the people in the front row. Anyway, he scratched his chin a bit and he said, I'll send you something. And he wrote out by hand the Macpherson's Lament or Macpherson's Rant. I think that these terms are used probably interchangeably. I've always called it Macpherson's Lament. And he'd written it all out. But it was like screeds of paper. So there's no way I was going to have time to play all this, let alone learn it. So I kind of took out what I thought were the key 3 or 4 verses and turned it into a sort of song with a bit of a chorus. And it all worked out, it went swimmingly.
Well, it worked really well, I think.
And I think I prefer the Macpherson's Lament thing to the Parcel of Rogues one, but that's just personal, I think.
And so you found it quite easy to combine these 2 different things, the blues and the Scottish element?
Well, I've since gone back and looked at every time the end of January comes round, I kind of do some social media that kind of highlights these songs, usually in rotation. I thought it's about time I did another one, or maybe I did a whole album of them. But I've kind of gone through a lot of Burns stuff looking for things that would fit, and I don't know whether it was just sheer luck that Parcel of Rogues, the register of it, lent itself to being kind of pushed slightly into a blues friendly format. And similarly with Macpherson's Lament, I don't know that I've not come across anything that would fit quite so nicely. And certainly I have a big problem learning words, just getting them to stick. And it took, when I did Parcel of Rogues, it took me months to get that in my head. And when it's the same with Macpherson's Lament, and I had to get it ready for this live show. And then a year later, Keris Matthews, who now does the blues show on Radio 2, she was doing her Sunday, or still does her Sunday morning show on BBC Six Music, and she invited me down to do a kind of on-ear slide guitar workshop, but also do the Macpherson's Lament thing because it was the end of November. So I had to learn it by then.
Well, your most recent release is Brexit Blues, is that right?
Yeah, kind of topical.
So you've been getting a bit more political.
Oh yeah, I guess, and I would say I'm not a political animal, but the whole, I can't use the word I used in the news release probably, but the whole mess around it, I mean, almost regardless of whether you leave or stay, it's just such an entire huge mess, and I'm sick of hearing it. For the record, I'm a Remainer, but I respect leavers as well, and I'm just not politically radical really, but it doesn't prevent me from having feelings either way or what I would wish for. And so that's the closest I've really come. But the song itself is more just an observation of the mess around the whole thing than putting it across my Remain.
I wondered if you thought blues music was a good vehicle for political commentary, because it's quite unusual. It's mostly about people's feelings, I would say.
It is, isn't it? It's there's a lot of folk music is aligned with politics and rebellion and what have you, but not so blues. This could be the first.
So there'd be more songs like that in the future.
There might be. It's good. I'm going to hope to get a bit more mileage out of that song because over the next month or two.
Well, it could drag on for years, so it's probably going to be relevant for a while.
Sadly, yes.
Okay, well, you've been on the road a long time. I get the impression listening to your music that you like travelling.
Oh yeah.
So whereabouts have you travelled?
This year has been, alone has been quite, been all over the place. We started off the year in California. I was doing some stuff at the NAMM show in the West Coast, primarily there because National Reso-phonic make my guitars, had a booth at this big sort of exhibition. And I was playing on there, and we used that as a kind of catalyst for a bunch more West Coast gigs. And then, where else were the first half of the year? Netherlands, Germany, Finland and Estonia, and then a big US tour in the summer, we covered about 10,000 miles. It's only 20 odd shows in 5 weeks, but a lot of miles. Started in Colorado, back to the West Coast to launch this very guitar, and then back to Colorado, then into the Midwest, and then back to Colorado to fly home.
Oh, what is the strangest thing that's ever happened to you in all your time on the road?
It's a funny thing for all the time. There's either nothing strange or it's all so strange that none of it seems strange. There's weird and wonderful places, that we get to see that if you were a tourist, you would never get to, so off the beaten track. But it's just all very general things. I can't think off the top of my head of any really weird thing. One of the weirdest experiences, actually, now it's been bubbling under as I'm talking. About 2012 or 13, we were in France. I'd just licensed an album to a French record label called Dixie Frog, and we're in Paris. I was doing a big album launch show, and Eric Bibb was playing as well at a place called New Morning in Paris, real nice venue. And the record label had put us in a hotel right opposite the venue. We were all being looked after really well. There'd been another few shows round about France, and this was the kind of finale of it. And a couple of days before, I'd been playing near Chinon, and we got the train back into Paris, and I was going to a studio to record. There's a guitar magazine over there called Guitar Sesh, and they do a cover. I don't know if they still do, but they're probably out of date now, DVDs, but they used to do a cover mount DVD, and they wanted me to basically play a few songs and show some licks and slide guitar techniques and stuff as an instructional thing to go in the cover mount of this magazine in the studio. But it was in the afternoon, and then there was this big show at night. So we were in Paris, we were waiting on the journalist from the magazine, and he came to pick us up in like a Renault Clio or something. We had effectively a two-seater, and there was Margaret, my wife, who's also my tour manager, myself, the guy from the record label, and all my gear, and this journalist. So it turned out the guy from the record label carried some stuff and went on the metro to the studio. We got there, did the session, came back out, and we were driving away from the studio, and a car in front stopped, suddenly started to reverse, and reversed right into the front of the car. And let's say, I'm not quite sure where the folk that were in the car were from, but they were, let's say they weren't very impressed, and there were lots of them. And they were quite aggressive, even though it had been their fault. We managed to calm the things down, and off they went. The journalist and these guys exchanged whatever details it was. Off they went, and we're driving right through the centre of Paris, and I'm starting to get nervous about the time. And Margaret's in the back, said, I can smell burning. And I sort of went in and went, oh no, it's something outside. Then people were kind of crossing the road like they do in busy city centres, and they're all kind of like waving and pointing at the front of the car. The car was on fire, and the journalist was just, so what? And he carried on, stopped outside their hotel. When the automatic doors were in the hotel, the whole reception of the hotel got filled with reek from this now burning tyre and radiator. And he was also coming to the show to review it. And when we saw him later on that night, I said, how's the car? He said, I just left it in the car park. It's probably coming back to be burnt to a cinder, I don't know. That was a kind of weird thing to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Both the thing happening and also this journalist's attitude to the car. So, I don't know if it's a rental car or his wife's car or whatever, but...
Yeah, just didn't care.
No.
Well, you've mentioned your guitar a few times, so why don't you tell us about it? Is this a new one?
It is, yeah. When we were at the NAMM show, I played their metal-bodied guitars with resonators in them. They're made by a company called Reso-phonic. We were kind of synonymous with blues and the development of blues, especially in the pre-war years, because the resonator was, I guess, a kind of invention to allow the guitar to be heard in noisy juke joints, or up until that point, guitar wasn't even played with other instruments because it wasn't really loud enough. But this is almost like a mechanical amplifier. It's like a spun aluminium cone that acts like a speaker cone, really. Mm-hmm. And I've kind of loved these guitars since I discovered them. And when we were at the NAMM show and I was playing afterwards, I did a show somewhere in LA, and we just dropped by to the factory to visit them. And in fact, I think it was even maybe before then, at one point the guy that runs the company had said, suggested the idea of doing signature guitar. So the idea of a Dave Arcari signature guitar kind of knocked me sideways. And that was another funny moment actually, because Margaret came and asked me, said, when I told her, she said, well, what did you say? And I went, nothing, because I was just, for once I was speechless. So we kind of came up with it. It's custom in many ways. The pickups, the way the pickups work, the finish is unique. They've called it ironwood, and a lot of the other national guitars have got slotted headstocks, but I use really heavy strings and I break a lot of strings. So trying to change a string in a slotted headstock, heavy gauge, on stage, in the dark, it's hard. So I got to put a neck with a flat headstock on. So there's the finish, there's a flat headstock, there's onboard power. Normally with some of these pickup systems you have to have an external power battery box, and you need to use a special cable, and it's a pain in the neck. So I'm delighted with it. I mean, they've made custom guitars for me in the past, but this is the first Dave Arcari signature model. So
is it available to buy in the exact same configuration?
It is, and it's available in various configurations. A kind of basic model that doesn't have the pickups, and it doesn't have these fancy tuning pegs on it. These are Waverleys, which are kind of pricey, let's say. They're a bit of a luxury item. But because the idea with this guitar was to come up with a hybrid guitar that I could use and play a gig if I had to with just one guitar, so it'll go quite comfortably into other tunings, and it's even playable in standard tuning. It's not the easiest guitar to play in standard tuning, but it's possible. So if push comes to shove and I can only travel with one guitar, this guitar will wear many hats. It's available without the pickups and the base model, and without the fancy Waverley tuners. And then the next model up has got the next option to add is the pickup system, which is an acoustic pickup in here and a Lawler Imperial magnetic humbucker here for the guitar nerds here. So this is good for an acoustic sound. If you try and put this through a guitar amp or add any overdrive to it, it just sounds horrible. It's like a bee in a tin can. So the magnetic, more regular guitar pickup is better for amplified stuff. So I DI this. I actually DI, I don't really use a guitar amp, but I usually add a bit of distortion when I'm playing with this pickup. And then the final upgrade would be to upgrade to Waverley tuner. So there's kind of three sets: basic with the pickup system, and the full Monty, including the tuners.
So if you're DIing it, then are you using some kind of amp simulation?
Yeah, it's funny, I dabbled with it in the past because I'm not a big fan of digital stuff. And I tried a few things out, they just didn't really hack it, the dynamic. They actually sounded fine if you were just sitting playing or through headphones, but when you try to, they seem to rob the dynamics from the sound. And then about 2 years ago, I used to use DI through a valve overdrive pedal and a delay pedal I use on one or two songs for some slapback echo, but I had no EQ or anything, and the overdrive pedal had a huge big brick power supplying transformer, and then if we were touring in the States I had to take another transformer with me to work with all that, so it was big and heavy and not very flexible. And about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I started to get interested in amp modelling and impulse responses from speaker cabinets, and discovered a thing called the Kemper, which is like a digital modelling amplifier. It's quite high end, and I started to like the idea of that. And when I checked them out, I realised that, well, this digital stuff has kind of come of age, it's now practical. But while the sound was practical, the Kemper package wasn't, because it's like an amp head. They call it a toaster. And they do rack mount versions, but the one that most people have got is like an amplifier head, and then you need a controller pedal, which is a huge big floor switch with floorboard with switches on it. So that was actually going to end up being more stuff to cart about. And then I discovered a company called Fractal Systems, and they had basically the same idea but all built into a floor unit.
Right.
So I went down that route, and I've been absolutely delighted with it. I've used it. That's all I've used ever since. I can DI and bypass all the amp models and speaker simulation and I full control over EQ, so if there's just a line check before a show, at least you're never going to have the sound right for any venue, but if I can give the sound engineer something that's 70 or 80% there, and then Margaret will work with the sound engineer to sort the rest of the sound, that's a big step forward for me. And then when I go into other sounds, I've got various amp models and speaker simulations and overdrives and stuff, so it's basically everything in one box, and it works pretty good.
So do you ever play venues that don't have a PA system?
Not really. I've done completely unplugged shows. We've got a pal in Kirriemuir who's got a gallery, maybe a little bit bigger than this one, and she used to put on music, maybe 5 or 6 completely unplugged shows a year, and I do that completely acoustically. If I do a house concert, invariably it's completely acoustic. In fact, on the US tour, I played a venue in Traverse City called Acoustic Mead, and it's a sort of a mead brewery kind of place. They've got a tap room, which is quite small, but they charge so it's an expensive ticket because it's a very personal gig and I did that. The promoter wanted to put a PA system in. When I saw the size of the place, I thought, these guitars are loud. I'm loud. I can deal with this. So sometimes I'll do that, and then there's been a few shows that I've done where I've just used a single microphone, and the mic I use is it's called a Myrtle. It's made by a company called Ear Trumpet Labs up by Oregon, in the northwest of the States, and I kind of have it out front, and it's almost like the old bluegrass thing. It picks up my voice, the instrument, and it'll even pick up the foot stomp from the stage, and I quite enjoy playing gigs like that. Because we were discussing on the road here, the road up to Inverness, actually, there was a gig in Inverness last night. It's quite a long drive from home, so the chat in the car is always about moving things on and what we do. And I'm kind of almost a little bit schizophrenic in my music, because I kind of go from, usually start the show off with a bit more mellow acoustic-y kind of thing, and then it moves into some overdrive, and then some thermonuclear overdrive towards the end. So sometimes I play shows that are people sitting in rows, and it's all dead polite, and it's like a very formal theatre setting, or there can be a mosh pit and people here, and it's strange sometimes because I don't really know what I am or what I do. So yes, it goes from completely unplugged and acoustic to, but yeah, there's usually either a house rig, or if it's a festival or a big venue, there'll be a hired-in rig.
Sounds like it's always a fresh challenge anyway.
Yeah, it's always fun though.
Well, I think you're going to play something for us now. So
yeah.
Would you like to introduce the song first?
This is a song I wrote a few years ago. It's a title track of an album called Devil's Left Hand, as opposed to Steve Earle's very famous Devil's Right Hand. It had its debut at a show I played with Steve Earle, actually, and it went well. So this is Devil's Left Hand, not Devil's Right Hand, Devil's Left Hand. Last night I met an old friend, shook him by the hand. Something strange was happening, so he gave me his left hand. When I shook his hand, didn't feel so good, but on his little finger a broken bottle stood. overcrowding, it's getting out of control. I whipped his ass and told him, you'll never win my soul. The bull's left hand reached across the stakes. I drank all his whiskey and learned some of his tricks. The bull's left hand reached across the stakes. I whipped his ass and told him, you'll never win my soul.
Well, I wanted to ask you what your preferred tuning was, since you mostly have to keep this guitar in one tuning, I suppose.
Yes, I do actually, and that's the reason why normally I carry different guitars. I say this guitar, it will go into other tunings, but I think they like this, the cone likes to settle into a tuning. Do I have a favourite? The two main ones I use are Open D and Open G. Open C kind of lends itself more to this kind of our Open D. I used to play it in Open D right down a step, but more recently I've moved up to Open D. It just sits better if I'm changing tunes. But the fourth and sixth string are the same, so it lends itself much more to an alternating bass, and then you can play a melody kind of thing on the top line, the top two strings or whatever. Whereas Open G, I would say, is almost instant blues because you've got this. Oh, I was going to play it, but I can't play it in this guitar because it's tuned into Open C. I can maybe actually play it. Open G would be like. You get that kind of sound. I did that, I really just kind of moved it all up a string, and it's sort of a bit like an Open G. But an Open G is probably my favourite because it's a bit more brash, it's a bit more instant Delta blues, you know.
Do you find experimenting with different tunings is useful when you're writing songs?
In one way, yes, but I don't really want to start pushing it into other tunings because then I need to carry another guitar or start changing too much. I mean, I have thought about going into maybe a minor tuning, which would only mean changing one string very slightly. On one hand, it opens up possibilities, but on the other hand, the open tunings kind of fence you in a bit because when you're fine when you're in the kind of bass chord. There's lots of places to go, but when you go to the other two chords, you know, the F and the G chord, which are you're limited to playing there or playing, you know, trying to do something weird with your fingers, like that's kind of like a G, and that's kind of like a F. So you can kind of go there, but you are a little bit limited into the places that you can go. So it's great on one hand. On the other hand, it's a little bit like sometimes when I'm coming up with new songs, I think it's like writing a book, but I only know 50 words. I just keep trying to put them around in different ways and change the tempo and the timing and the phrasing and stuff, and just try to squeeze something new out of it.
And do you find it easy to come up with new stuff because the blues has been around a long time? So.
It's very difficult coming up. That's the lyric from a lyrical point of view. I find songwriting pretty straightforward and easy. That's not the challenge. The challenge for me is working within the blues sphere, within the two open tunings, or do some stuff in regular tuning as well, but largely it's in the open tuning. So trying to come up with something that's slightly different or sounds slightly different or a new approach to something that's in such a straight form. You know, there are really only 3 or 4 forms or chord progressions or whatever. So to try and keep it within that, 'cause if you move too much out of it, it starts to sound too much like folk music or jazz or something. It starts to get weird on you. Mm-hmm. So yes, it's a challenge, and that's the songwriting process for me is to come up with something what I think is a little bit unusual or not too similar to anything else I've done on the guitar, and then I'll build the song on top of that.
And do you normally start with the words then?
No, usually the guitar.
Right,
That's got to be that's the catalyst for it all. Okay.
I wanted to ask you about the song Dragonfly as well, because I really enjoyed that one. What's the story behind that?
Now, I'm trying to think where that came from. I play it on a diddly bow, which is like one string, and it's on the Devil's Left Hand album, and is it also on? It may be on some of the other albums as well, but it's on the Devil's Left Hand album, and the version that most people hear, it's quite overdriven, but basically it's a bit of a 2x1 inch bit of wood about that length, indiscriminate length, with an empty tin can at one end with a hole in it, and a guitar string through the hole, the thing at the end of the guitar string stops it coming right through, and then a guitar tuning peg at the other end, and a bit of, I can't even remember what we've got jammed in there, a bit of metal jammed in the end to act as a nut, and I get it roughly to sound like an open, like a G note, and then play it with a bottleneck. So there's even less you can do with that. Not an awful lot of places you can go that don't sound awful discordant. But so after I'd made this thing really just as a bit of fun, and then I was messing about with it, and I thought I'll try recording it. I put a microphone right inside the tin can. It sounded like hell, but it was fun. And I think I must have been messing about and just going da 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 da, and just started messing around. And so really, yeah, it was born out of messing around with this diddly bow. And then there's another song called Get Out of My Way, which is on an album that I recorded in Helsinki, Finland, with a bass player and a guy playing a snare drum. So, and it wasn't played so much similar to a diddly bow, but it was played in a one-string cigar box guitar.
Right.
But plugged with a pickup and plugged in, and just fire up some overdrive and just have some fun. But that's really all that song was, just kind of cutting loose a bit of a joke that kind of stuck.
Mm-hmm. That was good. Well, by the time people watch this video, the Blues Festival is probably going to be over. So, what's next for you?
After this, we go back home on Monday, and then back to the USA a week on Saturday. Hit the States for an East Coast tour, which is just, I think, about 10 or 11 dates over a fortnight. So not too big a jaunt. And then when I come back from there, I've got 4 Scottish gigs: Glasgow, Edinburgh, Kinross, and Aberdeen. I've got a pal called Ismo Havisto coming across from Finland to do these shows with me, so looking forward to that. And that'll pretty much take me up to the end of the year, and hopefully some new songs written. Very
good. Well, you're going to play another song for us.
I'll give you another, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Magic. Thank you, man.
Good talking to you.
This is called Shiny White. And it was born out of the thing, messing about on the guitar and just kind of throwing something on top of it, and the stuff that I threw on top of it stayed. I know they play with a foot stomp, so I'll try not to get too